I don't know about you, but this week feels different. You can feel it in the air. The Combine is here, every front office in the league is packed into one building, and suddenly the noise around this team just got louder. Not draft noise, not rumor for clicks noise, real movement kind of noise. And here's what makes it wild. Two completely different storylines just collided at the exact same time. One that could completely change this offense overnight, and another that might quietly signal the end of something we thought was part of the future. As a Bills fan, that mix hits you right in the chest. Excitement, anxiety, hope, doubt, all at once. Something just opened up that didn't look possible a few months ago. And at the same time, there's real talk that someone we invested in might be on the way out. And if both of these things connect the way it feels like they might, this offseason just went from, let's tweak a few things, to, we're making a statement. I'm telling you right now, what happened this week at the Combine matters way more than people realize. Before we break this whole thing down, real quick, if you're a true Bills fan who lives and breathes this team like I do, hit that like button and subscribe to Bills Nation Update. The channel's brand new, we're pushing for our first 2,000 subscribers, and this is the place for real opinions, not sugar-coated takes. So here's what happened. With the NFL Combine kicking off at Lucas Oil Stadium, every GM, every scout, every executive in the league is in the same building. And yeah, they're evaluating draft prospects. But let's be honest, this is also where trade talks heat up fast. And one name that Bills Mafia has been whispering about for weeks? A.J. Brown. Now, we all know the situation in Philadelphia hasn't exactly been sunshine and rainbows. Brown was visibly frustrated last season. Body language, sideline reactions. The vibe was off, and the speculation about a possible change of scenery started building early in this 2026 offseason. But here's the key moment. When Eagles GM Howie Roseman took the podium at the Combine, he didn't slam the door shut like he did at the trade deadline last year, when he gave what he called an emphatic no. This time, he said, "We're always listening, always listening." That's not nothing. That's not GM talk for he's untouchable. That's an open door. That's a complete tone shift. And when you say that publicly in a room full of general managers, you're basically telling the league you're open for business. So now the question becomes, what does Brandon Beane do? Because let's be honest, this offense needs juice. It needs a true, proven, physical, alpha wide receiver. And Brown, who turns 29 this summer, is exactly that. Super Bowl level experience, dominant after the catch, can win outside, can bully corners, can stretch the field. He's the kind of instant upgrade that changes how defenses play Josh Allen immediately. Now here's where it gets interesting. One recent projection suggested Buffalo could land Brown for as little as a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick. If that's real, you do that yesterday. But then, Dan Graziano from ESPN floated 4 potential trade packages, and 3 of them involved a first-round pick, including the one projected for Buffalo. Now we're talking about a serious decision. Because giving up a first is a completely different conversation than moving mid-round capital. But here's my honest fan reaction. If the price is right, you pull the trigger. This offense didn't have a single wide receiver last season with 15 or more downfield receptions of 10 or more air yards. Not one. That's insane. That's not championship-level explosiveness. Adding Brown fixes that overnight. But here's the part that makes this whole thing feel even bigger. Because while we're talking about possibly adding a star, there's real talk that someone else might be heading out the door. And if that second move actually happens, it changes the entire picture of this wide receiver room. Because one analyst just predicted Buffalo could trade away a young receiver we all thought was part of the future, And the proposed destination? An AFC rival. And trust me, that part of this story is just as complicated as the first. Now let's talk about the other side of this. Because while we're sitting here dreaming about adding a star like A.J. Brown, there's another conversation happening that feels way less comfortable. And that's about Keon Coleman. Man, this one is tough. We went into last season believing Coleman was about to take that leap. Rookie flashes, big body, contested catchability. The belief was that he'd grow into a reliable target for Josh Allen. Instead, it went the other direction. The production wasn't consistent, the separation wasn't there, and then the disciplinary stuff started popping up. Missed practices, missed meetings. That's the kind of thing that drives coaching staffs crazy, especially when you're trying to build culture. And here's where it gets real. According to Sports Illustrated analyst Ethan Hutton, there's a growing belief that this new coaching regime in Buffalo, led by head coach Joe Brady, might be ready to move on from the Coleman project altogether. That's not a small statement. Hutton even laid out a projected trade. The Bills would send Coleman and a 2026 sixth-round pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers. In return, Buffalo would receive a 2026 fourth-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. So, basically, recoup mid-round draft capital and reset. Now here's what makes this complicated. Coleman was actually one of the more productive pass catchers on this team last year, even with the discipline issues. And let's not ignore this. The wide receiver room already struggled badly. NFL Media's Matt Okada pointed out something that honestly shocked me. In 2025, the Bills did not have a single wide receiver log 15 or more downfield receptions. That's passes with 10 or more air yards, according to NFL Pro. Not one. And only 4 teams in the entire league had that problem. The Chiefs, the Steelers, the Jets, and us. That's a red flag. Now think about this. The Bills already tried to add help at last year's trade deadline, and GM Brandon Beane admitted they couldn't find a willing partner. They later signed Mecole Hardman and claimed Brandon Cooks off waivers late in the season. And Cooks? He instantly became one of Allen's top targets despite arriving in December. But now he's headed for free agency. So if you trade Coleman and Cooks walks, you're potentially creating another hole in a room that already lacked explosive production. And here's the irony. If Coleman actually goes to Pittsburgh, he'd project as a wide receiver 2 alongside DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin III, and a tight end trio of Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, and Darnell Washington. And that's not even factoring in the quarterback situation there. The Steelers are waiting on a decision about Aaron Rodgers and his NFL future. If Rodgers doesn't play, second-year quarterback Will Howard would likely take over, which means they're trying to surround that room with as much help as possible. So here's the real question we have to ask as Bills fans. Are we upgrading the room, or are we reshuffling it? Because if you trade Coleman for mid-round picks, and you flip those assets into a blockbuster move for A.J. Brown, that's a clear statement. That's Beane saying, we're done waiting on development. We want proven production. But if you move Coleman and don't land a top-tier replacement, now we're back in the same conversation we had last year. Where's the explosiveness? Who's stretching the field? Who's consistently winning outside? And that's why these two stories feel connected. One opens the door for a massive, aggressive swing. The other suggests the team might be ready to close the chapter on a young player they once believed in. Together, they scream one thing. This front office knows the window with Josh Allen is now, and they're at a crossroads. Now let's step back and look at what both of these moves would really say about where this team stands heading into 2026. When you zoom out and look at both of these situations together, it tells you everything about where this team's head is at right now. On one side, you've got a real opportunity to go get a proven, elite-level wide receiver in A.J. Brown, a guy who's still only turning 29 this summer, who's played in the biggest games, who brings physicality, edge, and that alpha presence this offense has been missing. On the other side, you've got serious questions about Keon Coleman, a former second-round pick who was expected to grow into a dependable weapon for Josh Allen, but instead dealt with inconsistency and disciplinary issues like missed practices and meetings, and was even a healthy scratch 4 times last season. That's not just a performance issue, that's trust. And when a new regime led by Joe Brady is trying to set a tone, culture matters. Now factor in what we already know. The Bills didn't have a single wide receiver with 15 or more downfield catches of 10-plus air yards last season. Not one. They tried at the trade deadline to find help, but Brandon Beane couldn't get a deal done. They brought in Mecole Hardman and claimed Brandon Cooks late, and Cooks instantly became one of Allen's top targets. But now, he's heading to free agency. So, this room is fragile, and that's why these 2 potential moves feel so decisive. If Beane can flip mid-round assets, maybe even something like a 3rd and 5th if that projection holds, and land Brown without giving up a first-round pick like Dan Graziano suggested might be required, that's aggressive, but controlled. If it costs a first, that's a statement. That's saying, we're done drafting projects, we're investing in certainty. And if Coleman gets moved to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 2026 4th and a 2027 5th, while we send back a 6th, that's essentially resetting value and admitting the development didn't go the way we hoped. As a fan, here's how I feel. This doesn't feel random. This feels intentional. It feels like the front office understands something very clearly. The championship window with Josh Allen is not a someday conversation. It's now. And you don't waste now. You don't waste prime quarterback years hoping a second-round receiver figures it out while the AFC keeps loading up. You either double down on proven talent, or you risk spinning your wheels again. So, is this moment positive or concerning? Honestly, it's decisive, and I'd rather be decisive than stuck. If we land A.J. Brown and reset the room around him, that's a bold swing. That's Buffalo saying we're not satisfied being close. If we move on from Coleman because the trust just isn't there, that's tough, but it's accountability. Both stories together tell me this: the Bills are not sitting still. And as a fan who's watched this team grind, fight, fall short, and get back up every single year, I'd rather see aggression than hesitation. Now, I want to hear from you. Would you trade a first-round pick for A.J. Brown if that's what it takes? And would you move on from Keon Coleman right now? Or give him one more shot? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it like real fans. And if you're rocking with honest, emotional, no-filter Bills coverage, make sure you like the video and subscribe to Bills Nation Update. The channel's brand new, we're pushing toward our first 2,000 subscribers, and every single one of you helps build this into a real home for Bills Mafia. We're just getting started. Go Bills!